over these last months, the question has been asked over and over again. What is this Tao? What is this Dharma? What is this will of God? And it would seem that from our own experience, because these descriptions are really abstractions, when we've reached that place of stillness, where there is no further movement, and yet life continues in perpetuity, there and only there is this Dharma, this Tao, this will of God enacted. So in that sense, we can call it a law or the law. Maybe we can call it the law of life, but we certainly know that it is not brought into action until stillness and movement are present. But that leads us to another question. All of life is movement, and all of life is filled with laws. The law of karma, the cause and effect, the law of the spin, all of the rest of it. How does it all fit together? How does it work in us? And over these last days, the stories that have been told have been to explore both the qualities of stillness and of movement. Let's see what we can make out of this story today relative to this. A long time ago, there was a kingdom in which a young king ruled. And he was very fair, he was very intelligent, and he ruled very well. But, sad to say, he died young. And he left his son, who was then in his early teen years, to take over the kingdom. But this son, not only was he young, but he was not very bright, not clever at all. So he was very easily manipulated by the advisors and all of those around him. Now it so happened that in that kingdom there was a certain painter, a house painter. He was a surly, cantankerous man, envious and covetous, and he very often worked with the very famous and well-known house builder, who was totally the opposite. Gregarious, outgoing, thorough in what he did, loved by all. So the house painter really didn't like him at all. They were not in any way friends, even though they worked together very often. So it so happened that when this young king took over the kingdom, and it was known far and wide that he was of lesser intelligence and easily manipulated, the painter thought, this is an ideal situation. Now I can get rid of this fellow. Gets up my nose. He annoys me. So he had a plan. So one day he dusted himself with white powder, put a sheet over his shoulders, white turban around his head, and he marched through the streets of town on his way to the palace. Well, by the time he got there, there were a lot of people behind him wondering who this strange creature was. So by the time they got to the palace, guards the palace guards were quite prepared, and they didn't quibble at all when this strange fellow asked to be admitted into the king's presence. Well, when he was brought before the king said, "Who are you and what do you want?" The painter said, "Well, I'm a heavenly being, and I was up in heaven, and I've met your father, the king." "Oh," said the king, tell me, how is he?" "Oh, he's very well. He's very, very happy, very contented. But there's only one thing. There are so many of his relatives up there, and they're living in this very small house that's hardly big enough for them. So he's requested me to ask of you that you send the best builder that you have to build him a new palace in heaven." "Oh," said the king, "well, I don't know how we can do that. Well, we've got the best builder in town, but how can we send him to heaven?" "Oh, that's easy," said the painter in disguise. "He's given me instructions. He said, you just build a big fire, and you sit the builder on the top, and the smoke will carry him up to heaven." "Oh," said the king, "we can do that without any problem at all." So off went the painter back to his house to take off his disguise, and immediately the king put into action. He called the builder over into his presence, and he told him the story, that his Father in heaven had requested that he be sent up in smoke to build him a new palace. Well, of course, when the builder heard this, he was terrified, absolutely. But the king said, "This is not a request, this is an order." So the builder went back to his house, quaking in his boots. When he told his wife was a very smart woman. She said, "Look, don't worry, we'll find a way." So she said, "You have to go back to the king. Tell him this, that you're afraid that if you're sent to heaven in his palace grounds, you might get lost on the way. But you better go from your own house, and then you can have a direct route right up to the heavenly realms." So the builder went over to the king and told him. Then the king said, "That's all right, I'll send all my helpers to come and build the fire for you later." But in the meantime, the builder went back to his house, and his wife and he got very, very busy immediately digging a tunnel from outside their house